These are the shocking photographs that a nurse took with dead patients. She was then accused of murdering 38. This is the case of Italy's so-called Angel of Death. It was spring 2014 in Italy. 42-year-old Daniela Poggiali was working at a hospital after qualifying as a nurse in 1995. She said that she got the job initially because she loved working in busy environments with a lot of people. However, the hospital she was working at started to see an alarming amount of deaths, similar to the cases of Beverly Allitt and also Lucy Letby. Suspicions around the hospital were growing due to them having over 100 deaths in just 2 years. Now, Daniela was no stranger to controversy at work. She'd made numerous enemies among her colleagues. Some said she'd given patients sleeping pills so she had an easier shift. Now, Daniela put this down to just gossipers and people being jealous of her at work. She claimed there was no truth to it, but then the accusations got even more disturbing. In 2013, there were 27 incidents of theft in the hospital. Daniela was reported for this. She was found guilty of trying to steal the wallet of a man who had simply gone into the hospital to visit his sick wife. She was also found guilty of stealing medication and food. Between March and April 2014, there were 6 deaths under her watch. One of these was a patient called Rosa. Rosa had actually come into the hospital with a non-life-threatening condition. She should have just been able to be discharged after a couple of days. However, after being treated by Daniela, she started having convulsions and died. Medications were unaccounted for, and the hospital reported this to police. Daniela was suspended from work. She was soon charged with Rosa's death. The story was headline news, along with some disturbing photos that police had found on Daniela's phone. These were pictures of her smiling and posing next to deceased patients. Now, investigators believed that Rosa was one of potentially 38 victims that were murdered by Daniela. She was charged with murder and was found guilty, and she was given life in prison, but that's far from the end of this story. Daniela served just 1 year in prison before being acquitted. She maintains her innocence in this case and states that this was simply a witch hunt. So what do you believe? Let me know in the comments.
Here are some serial killer facts from the deep, dark depths of my brain. Jeffrey Dahmer didn't eat people with tattoos because he thought that it made the flesh taste funny, so should this be a unanimous opinion among all people who eat other people, here is your excuse to go get your next tattoo. This is Pee Wee Gaskins. Now, Pee Wee drove a hearse around that had a bumper sticker on it that said, "I haul dead people." Pee Wee, in fact, was hauling dead people around in his hearse, and the fucked up thing is he told his friends that that is what he used the hearse for, and nobody believed him. And he claims to have killed upwards of 110 people. So, yeah. This dickhead, otherwise known as Richard Chase, otherwise known as the Vampire of Sacramento, would not attempt to break into people's homes whose doors were locked because he took it as a sign that he was not welcome. Lock your doors, girlies. Dennis Rader, also known as the BTK Killer, was a technician who installed security systems a lot of the time for people who were afraid of the BTK Killer breaking into their home. This twisted motherfucker, Ed Gein, is actually not a serial killer as he was only convicted of 2 murders, but he did grave rob 9 graves, mutilate all 9 corpses, and made their body parts into various objects. One of those being a nipple belt. As tempting as it is, I'm telling you, don't fucking Google it. Yeah, we all know this guy, but did you know that Ted Bundy worked at a suicide hotline? Don't love that. Also, no, he's not hot, you sick fuck. So most serial killers have a lower than average IQ, which you think would be self-explanatory because you have to be some kind of weird dumbass to kill people, but at the same time it poses the question, how the fuck did some of them get away with it for so long? Now, you may assume that serial killers are loners, but actually the majority of them have partners or families. So next time your partner goes out somewhere and you're worried about them cheating on you, now you have something else to worry about. And finally, around 70% of all known serial killers are American. So do with that information what you will.
To say this is a gut-wrenching tragedy, it doesn't even do it justice. I mean, I had to have about 4 cry breaks during the research. It was 8 p.m. on the 30th of July, 1982. 2 coaches set off from a town not too far from Paris in France. They were both carrying children and teachers that were heading to summer camp. The camp was in the French Alps, and these guys could not wait. It was actually a trip set up for like lower income families to enable them to have kind of like a summer holiday. That made it even more special that these kids were finally able to do this. They were beaming inside of that coach, super excited for an adventure with their friends, but they wouldn't make it. So these coaches, they're chugging along the A6 headed towards Lyon. And as they started driving, it started chucking it down with rain. And not only that, but it was late at night, and also the traffic was just really bad due to this being quite a popular time that people would drive off on their summer holidays. Visibility was poor because they were driving at night, but they did this so that they would be like time efficient. The kids could sleep in the coach, they could get there first thing in the morning and just make the most of the day. 6 hours into the journey though, tragedy struck. Suddenly, out of nowhere, 2 cars that had been overtaking cut back into a lane in between the 2 coaches. At the very same time, a car up ahead braked sharply, causing one of the coaches to slam on their brakes. The second coach then hit the back of the second car, and a nightmare began. The petrol tank of one of the cars was suddenly ripped open by the impact, and it just turned into a ball of flames. Petrol flooded all over the road. Cars were swerving to try and get out of the way, and they were crashing too. 2 other cars smashed into the side of one of the coaches, and eventually 6 cars were on fire. I just can't imagine the absolute terror of those poor kids and teachers to be jolted awake on that coach to just see an inferno in front of them. And you can't escape. They couldn't get out of the coach. One of the coach's doors were like jammed into the actual side of the coach, so they couldn't even get out if they wanted to. The front coach was able to evacuate, and children were hurried off the vehicle and just kind of like shuffled into the middle of the road where they could hear the screams from their friends and teachers. Panicked teachers then thought quickly and started smashing the back window of one of the coaches. 16 children managed to scramble free. They were like grabbing onto the shattered glass, pulling themselves out. Tragically, 46 children perished and 7 adults. Just imagine those parents having said goodbye to their kids, just expecting them to go off on a lovely summer camp and come back super excited, having to be woken up to that phone call. They were told about the accident over the phone, and there were images in the newspapers of parents passing out with grief. Horrifically, some of the victims were so badly burned they couldn't even identify them. They couldn't have their own named coffins. One of the mums said that adding to her grief was the fact that she didn't know which coffin to hug. I'd rather die myself 100% than go through that. It turned out the brakes on the second coach were faulty, and the insurance company had to pay out 12 million francs to the victims' families, but I'm sure it's like a spot plaster on a giant open wound. Like, I can't imagine anything would have made them feel better in those circumstances.
The Uber driver serial killer. This one's gonna make you rethink getting in an Uber. Hi, I'm Meg. I talk about true crime, and if that's what you're into, go ahead and follow. Let's get into this case. The Uber driver in question was 52-year-old Jason Dalton. Now, this guy seemed pretty normal. He had a wife and 2 kids, one being 15 and one being 10 years old. He was known for being quite a nice guy, normal family man. But weeks before the incident happened, things shifted. People in his life described him as being maybe depressed, or he was just going through a rough time. Neighbors also later came forward saying that days leading up he was acting very paranoid. Previous colleagues that he had worked with at an insurance company also said that he was sometimes very easily angered and had a very bad temper. Now let's get into what Jason Dalton did. February 2016 in Kalamazoo, Michigan, Uber was just kind of getting started. Well, it was just starting to get popular, and it did not have the safety measures that it has today. Jason signed up to make some easy money. It was like a side job for him. He had good ratings and nothing really seemed off about him. That's until February 20th of 2016. Earlier that day, he went gun shopping with a friend and bought like a bulletproof vest and stuff like that. And things really took a turn at 4 p.m. He took off to pick up his first client named Matt. Now, Matt was just trying to get to a friend's house because he had left his car there. Matt gets in the front seat because Jason had his dog in the back seat, and they take off. Things seem normal. Jason gets a phone call from his son. He answers it on his Bluetooth. He then hangs up the phone. And out of nowhere, Jason hits the gas pedal. They're driving at 80 miles per hour at this point, And Jason wasn't stopping for any stop signs. He was going on side paths, not following any road signs whatsoever. And Matt, understandably, is freaking out. Matt is yelling at Jason at this point, like, "This is good. I'll get out here. Please just let me out." That's when Jason hit the brakes as hard as he could. So they screeched and Matt jumped out of the car. Matt then called the police and they didn't really take it that seriously. That same day at 5:15, a girl called Macy calls for an Uber. Jason is the one who accepts it and he goes to pick her up. Macy lived in an apartment complex, so Jason didn't find her right away. They were kind of missing each other. He called her super angry, "Where are you?" And she was like, "I'm here." And he angrily just hung up the phone. And Jason was furious at this point. And a woman named Tiana, her kid, and a few of her kids' friends were walking to another friend's house. Altogether, they were a group of 6. They were also at that apartment complex. They were leaving it, and Jason stopped next to them, and he's like, "Macy." And Tiana's like, "No." He kept insisting that Tiana was Macy, and she was like, "I'm not, please go." And so once again, he gets super angry and drives off. That's when he took a 180 turn and started beelining for the girls. But this time, he was holding a gun out of the window. He fired 14 shots. The girls were running everywhere, and Tiana was even using herself to shield the girls from bullets. Tiana was shot 4 times in her arm, leg, and back, but luckily, everyone survived. While speeding out, Jason actually collided with another car, which resulted in some damage on his car. The people in the car were fine. But now the police are getting multiple reports of people describing the same car. It was a silver Chevrolet Equinox. The police then decide to call Matt, the first guy, back, this time requesting more information from him, and he was able to send them his profile, which had his name and a picture of him on it. As this was happening, Jason called his wife, Carol, and asked her to meet him. He wanted to do a car swap with her. It was very strange when she met up with him because he gave her a gun and he was like, "You and the kids don't leave the house." He then told her that he was going to do something, and he didn't say what, but he said, you'll figure it out when you watch the news tonight. If I was her, I'd be calling the police. I don't know. That was a bit suspicious. And so Jason is now driving a black Chevy, and the police are looking for the wrong car. At 10 p.m. later that night, Jason spots a family at a car dealership. He stops his car, gets out of it, and asks Tyler and Rich Smith what they're looking at. Before they could even process the question, he opened fire on them both, killing both the 17-year-old and the 53-year-old father and son. Only half an hour later, he commits another shooting, this time in the parking lot of a Cracker Barrel restaurant. He started open firing on 2 cars in the parking lot, and unfortunately, he killed 4 women, 60-year-old Mary, 62-year-old Mary Lou, 74-year-old Dorothy, and 68-year-old Barbara. A 14-year-old girl called Abby was also in these cars, and she got shot in the head. When the police originally found her, they thought that she was dead, but she wasn't. They drove her to the hospital, and she actually flatlined at the hospital, but she would end up surviving. Between all of these shootings, Jason was completing just regular Uber trips. Literally picking people up, dropping them off, having small talk with them, and according to these customers, these lucky customers, he was acting completely normal, despite the fact that he had just shot and killed 6 people. Police were eventually able to connect the dots, and they realized that he had swapped cars. That's when they started pulling over all black Chevys. An officer eventually found him driving around and tailed his car and called for backup. A lot of cases like these, when people go on shooting rampages, it doesn't end well. Usually they shoot their way out. This is also referred to suicide by cop. But this was not what Jason did. Everything was pretty peaceful. He just surrendered himself. When questioning him about the whole ordeal, it took a while to actually get anything out of him. And when he did start talking, it was not what anybody would have expected. Jason claimed to have been possessed by the Uber app. A lot of people think he was putting on an act to try to seem insane so he would get an insanity plea. Yeah, Jason was saying that the moment he clicked on the Uber app, everything suddenly changed. The trial initially started in May of 2016, but apparently he was acting kind of crazy. Tiana, the woman he originally shot who survived, actually went on the stand to testify, but he was acting absolutely insane towards Tiana, which left her crying and left him to get dragged out of the courtroom. Just so you guys don't think I'm sounding insensitive, Jason had no history of mental illness at all. At this point, they stopped the trial so they could put Jason under psychological examination, which takes quite a few weeks. He was not found to be insane in the end. People thought that he was going to plead insane, but in the end, he actually didn't. He pled guilty. 16 charges later, he was given life in prison with no possibility of parole. It does make me wonder, though, like, what happened? Like, he was said to be a normal guy, and then suddenly he kills 6 people. Like, it makes you wonder what triggered this to happen. Also, just so you guys know, because I didn't mention this before, none of the victims were connected, so it wasn't anything personal. Anyways, let me know what you guys think of this case and what case you want me to cover next. This is our product of the day. It's just so good. Linked below, and it makes your eyebrows look good. I really do recommend it. Thanks for watching.
This boy murdered his 4-year-old sister for the most horrifying reason. It was February 2007 in Abilene in Texas. Charity Lee was a single mother looking after her son Paris and her daughter Ella. Charity had actually struggled with substance addiction throughout her life, but had come off the substance H and got sober just before becoming pregnant with her first child. She very briefly relapsed on the substance C when Paris was 12 and Ella was 3. She then became sober again for her children. Now, she was working as a waitress to make ends meet at a restaurant called Buffalo Wild Wings. On the 5th of February, she got ready for her shift as she normally did, and she'd organised a babysitter to look after the kids for the evening. While the babysitter sat in the house, 13-year-old Paris browsed horrific S content online. He even looked at the most extreme S content that you can get, if you know what I mean. I obviously can't say it on here. Now, if you're wondering how a teenager would find that kind of content online, Paris was actually incredibly intelligent, with an IQ of 141. At around 10 p.m. that evening, Paris convinced the babysitter to leave the house earlier than scheduled. After she departed, he went to the kitchen and grabbed a knife. He entered his little sister's bedroom with the knife and horrifically SA'd her. He would later admit that the more violent he became, the more excited he became. He then beat, choked, and then stabbed the little girl 17 times. Evidence showed that the stabs were slow and methodical. Paris then casually called up his friend from school and talked to them for around 6 minutes before then ringing 911. On the call, he stated, "I killed somebody, my sister. I feel so messed up." The operator talked him through how to perform CPR to try and revive her, but the evidence from the crime scene shows that he didn't even attempt this. Police raced over to the house and arrested the teenager, all while his mum was still at work, having no idea what was going on. It wasn't until after midnight that Charity was confronted by officers at the restaurant. Paris would later claim that the motive for killing his sister was to punish his mum for her past addiction issues, but he also claimed he did it so his sister wouldn't tell anyone about the SA. It transpired that Paris had been expressing homicidal thoughts through disturbing drawings since the age of 8. He told officers that he had planned to stab his mum when she came back from work, but he decided against this because he didn't realise how difficult it would be to kill someone. He's currently serving a 40-year prison sentence, but his mum regularly visits him behind bars. She says her maternal instinct means she cannot be that parent who abandons their kid. In 2012, she gave birth again to another child called Phoenix.
So this is the room that was used to torture, and torture is the most curated word I can use because it was much worse than that. But this room was used to torture at least 10 children in Bibb County, Alabama, where 7 adults were arrested for doing the unmentionable. I'm talking about tying kids down and doing the most unimaginable things to them. Anyway, we talked about this the other day, but what I'm about to talk to you about, weirdly, is a completely different case, but it is very relative. This guy right here, his name is Wesley Chambers. He's from Northern Colorado. All day, every day, we see a plethora of headlines just like this, where it is an adult who is possessing or spreading around CSAM and or abusing a minor. Now, I'm not saying it like that to minimize the headline. I'm saying it like that because we need to pay even closer attention to the details. Because this guy right here, Wesley Chambers, he's 34 years old from Fort Collins. He sexually abused a minor for years, plural, years. It wasn't a year. It wasn't over a year. It was years, plural, and recorded the abuse. And you're going to concur with my curiosity on what type of abuse in just a few seconds. Law enforcement found more than 200, not of multiple minors, of the same minor on his cell phone, and more than 20,000 photographs, 2,500 videos of the sexual abuse and exploitation of other minors. So he actually pleaded guilty to abusing that minor and for possessing the material of depicting the exploitation of other minors. But get this. So the investigators actually found that he was looking at CSAM on the dark web, including hurtcore sites. Like, do you know what a hurtcore site is? These are snuff videos. This is straight from Wikipedia. Even Wikipedia will tell you what hurtcore is. It is a portmanteau of words. Hardcore and hurt is a name given to particularly extreme form of we're going to say a child abuse, because I don't believe that these two words go together. I think it's CSAM, child abuse, usually involving degrading violence, bodily harm, and torture, typically relating to child abuse. Okay. And then they go into like a documentary that Vice made called, I think Hurt to the Core, something like that. But okay, back to my point. So I want you to think about this. Okay, so within the proximity of just days, we have two headlines, at least two headlines that I just put two and two get together. I'm like, oh, this is within days that these two things are happening, where not only 7 adults get arrested for procuring and commoditizing children for exploitation and torture and child sexual abuse, but you also have a man from a different geographic location. He's all the way in Colorado. These people are in Alabama. And this man, Wesley Chambers, pled guilty to abusing a minor. And that's the curiosity I had earlier. What kind of abuse was this? Was it this type of abuse? You know, because this guy was going to hurtcore websites on the dark web. So he was enjoying snuff videos of children getting tortured, possibly killed. And within days, we have these headlines touching each other. Again, like, guys, I don't know what else to say. Get on your knees and pray. I need you guys to like look around. I need you to look out for your kids. I need you to look out for your kids in your family, whether it's your nephew, your grandchildren, whatever it is, because this world is getting so crazy. Like, this is brain rot from pornography and, always having to up the bar, up the ante on searches and, get your dopamine fix. And people with sick, depraved minds are going into these areas where they're not getting their sexual pleasure from how God made it, right? They're getting it from sick stuff like this, where children have to be tortured. This is insane. And I have to remind you that this was a very sophisticated operation where they scheduled these adults. Okay, I'm going kind of on a tangential thought. These adults actually scheduled other adults every night, $200 a session to abuse kids. Some of them were their own kids. Okay, I'm telling you guys, this is like, we're living in a jungle. You've got to keep your eyes open.
Do you guys remember the father who woke up to his apartment being on fire, and so he decided to leave his children in the apartment while he left to go get help? You know, the one who boarded up all of his windows? Well, he has finally been charged. This is Joshua Kanan, and last Thanksgiving, he had his 3 children at his apartment to celebrate. He claims he had a smoke while standing at his stove and then decided to go to bed, but shortly after, he was woken up either by his cat or the smell of smoke. So he went and he found a small fire on the floor of his kitchen. And instead of going to get his children, one of them, by the way, had been sleeping with him in his room, he decided to leave to go and get help. He claims when he tried to go back inside that opening the door just made the fire bigger and he couldn't go in. By the time rescuers got to 10-year-old Riley and 9-year-old Connor, they had both lost their lives. 7-year-old Alina was still alive, but she passed away shortly later at the hospital. All 3 of their children gone, just like that. Police had a few questions for Joshua, one of them being, why were your windows boarded up? Well, he claims it's to prevent burglaries. He was also asked about the lack of smoke detectors, which he claims that they were making an annoying noise, and so he took it down. What makes this even more upsetting is the mother of the children, Jordan, had told Joshua, you need working smoke detectors, but she didn't stop there. She also told his mother, who would come clean his home once a week, and the landlord. But honestly, I'm not convinced, even if he had working smoke detectors that went off, that anything would have ended up differently. Jordan stated that Joshua's apartment was disgusting and it was a free-for-all, and Joshua had just recently taught his children how to make noodles on the stove. The most likely theory on how the fire began is 2 of the children had been making noodles, they left the stove on, and this led to the fire later on. They do not believe the fire was intentionally set, but because of Joshua's actions or lack thereof, he is being charged with neglect resulting in death. In my honest opinion, that charge is not enough, but it's a start. I just don't understand how any parent could walk out that front door knowing there is a fire without their children with them. Allegedly, his daughter was sleeping right next to him when he first woke up and smelled the fire. Why didn't you just take her with you? Why didn't you go get the kids? There is no reason why Connor, Riley, and Alina should not be alive right now. I will keep you guys updated on his case, and I just really hope they upgrade the charges.
His teachers called DCF 20 times, and he spent 20 years locked in a room anyway. Now, the state is being sued. So I have been following this story since it first broke. You might recognize this woman. She's pretty memorable. And this new development made my stomach drop. So let me give you the full story from the beginning, because this is one of the most heartbreaking things that I've ever covered. On the evening of February 17th of last year, 2025, firefighters responded to a burning home on Blake Street in Waterbury, Connecticut. 2 people were inside. The homeowner, Kimberly Sullivan, who's pictured here, she's 56 years old. She was evacuated safely, and her 32-year-old stepson was still inside and had to be helped out. He was suffering from smoke inhalation, but while EMS was treating him, he told them the truth. He set the fire on purpose. He used a lighter, hand sanitizer, and paper, and he said the words that stopped everyone in their tracks, saying, quote, I wanted my freedom. What he told police next is almost impossible to comprehend. The man, who has chosen to be publicly identified only as S, to protect his privacy, told investigators that he had been held captive in that home by his stepmother since he was approximately 11 years old. He described life in this 8 by 9 foot room with no heat, no air conditioning, behind a door that Kimberly Sullivan kept locked at all times. He said he was given 2 sandwiches and some water per day while he was confined to his room. He was never allowed to have friends. He told police that Kimberly had warned him that under the pain of death, no one was to see me. His first memory of abuse was when he was about 3 years old. The last time he went trick-or-treating was when he was 12 years old, and he dressed up as a firefighter. When firefighters pulled him out of that burning house, he stood 5'9" and weighed 68 pounds. 32 years old. Medical personnel said that he was near starvation and had wasting syndrome, which is a condition of severe weight loss and muscle deterioration. He had received no medical or dental care for decades. The Waterbury police chief said, quote, 30 years in law enforcement, this is the worst treatment of humanity that I've ever witnessed, end quote. S told police that Kimberly Sullivan instructed him to tell caseworkers that everything was fine when anyone came to the house. Once he was fully removed from school in 4th grade, his room became his entire world. He was given 3 or 4 books per year and a dictionary. Investigators wrote that he ultimately educated himself, reading each book and looking up every word he did not know. Now, here is where the system failed him. When S was a child and still in school, his teachers noticed something was very wrong. Former school principal Tom Pannone, who became principal of Barnard Elementary School in 2001, described calling the Department of Children and Family Services alongside his teachers over and over. He said, quote, "I can remember almost every teacher from kindergarten, 1st, 2nd, 3rd being in my office with me calling DCF together. And it wasn't just once a year, it was numerous times per year," he said. Teachers brought food in for S because he was constantly stealing food and eating out of the trash cans. He was constantly described as being hungry, extremely small, and thin. The principal said, quote, "We reported it and not a damn thing was done. That's the tragedy of this whole thing." DCF later confirmed that it had received 6 formal reports about S between 1996 and 2005 and did not remove him from the home. They said that under Connecticut law at the time, they could only interview a child without parental consent in cases of alleged abuse, not neglect, which is how the reports were classified. What the fuck is the difference? When DCF visited, S had been coached to say that everything was fine, so S was eventually pulled from school entirely after the school contacted DCF about his behavior. Shortly after that report, his weekday routine became, according to investigators, brutally consistent for the rest of his life. And here's the new development that brought this story back into the news. The court-appointed conservator for S has now filed a claim against the state of Connecticut, alleging that DCF failed to protect him despite receiving at least 20 calls from school officials. The claim argues that if DCF had properly investigated those reports, S would have been freed and allowed to live a normal life outside of captivity without torture or abuse. End quote. The claim must first be approved by the Connecticut Claims Commissioner before a lawsuit in Superior Court can proceed. But as for Kimberly Sullivan, she has pleaded not guilty to 2 counts: first-degree kidnapping, assault, intentional cruelty to persons, and unlawful restraint. She remains free on $300,000 bond while she awaits her trial. Her attorney has maintained that there is no evidence of locks or restraints and that his client is innocent. And he thankfully is alive. He is slowly recovering. He is building a new life. And in a public statement he released, he said, quote, "Much has already been said that tells part of the story of the abuse I endured. Someday, perhaps, my whole story will be told." End quote.
Her attorney was trying to explain away her very incriminating search history by bringing up the Real Housewives of Salt Lake City. I kid you not. This is Corey Richins. She's on trial right now. She is the one who wrote a book about grief and then was shortly after charged with taking her husband's life. So the witness is on the stand. He is the one who went through all the forensic data, so search history, calls, text, everything. And after they show her search history that looks very, very bad, the defense attorney asked the witness, "Have you heard about, the Real Housewives of Salt Lake City and Jenna Shaw and her charges?" Well, the witness did not know who the Real Housewives were or Jenna Shaw, and Jenna was actually charged with conspiracy to commit wire fraud. So my question is what does this have to do with that? If someone is poisoned, what does it go down on the death certificate? Which is interesting because it doesn't say OD, it says poison. I mean, maybe it could explain this one, luxury prisons for the rich in America, because Corey was $4.5 million in debt, so she definitely wasn't going there if it existed. What are you allowed inside Utah jails? Which is a little funny because she wrote her mother a letter trying to get someone to sneak in Crest white strips for her. Will life insurance pay if death certificate says pending? Death certificate says pending, will life insurance still pay? Can cops force you to do a lie detector test? What happens if you are detained but never got read your Miranda rights? Can probable cause be a testimony? She seems very freaked out on these ones, and I really would love to know the dates of these because she got a phone taken away and then she got a new phone, and these are searches on that new phone. So we know that Eric had already passed away. But I would like to know if she had police contact on the days of these searches and what was discussed. How to completely wipe an iPhone clear remotely. How to erase a phone data permanently with EMI number. How to permanently delete information from an iPhone. And I guess those results needed her to have the phone in hand, which she didn't. apartment, so she said remotely. Women, Utah prison, Summit County District Attorney. Can cops uncover deleted messages iPhone? How to lock my iCloud? What does lock lost iPhone actually do? Can deleted text messages be retrieved? Can you delete everything off an old iPhone without actually having it? Can you delete everything on an iCloud account? She said, what do cops, and I think she meant do, when they seize electronics, and what information can be obtained from a cell phone? This says, what is a lethal dose of fent and what is considered a lethal dose of fent? Can a manner of death be changed on a death certificate? What is white collar crime? Well, not this. Why would the FBI be involved? Is the medical examiner report and autopsy report different? What is considered non-natural manner of death? Who determines cause of death on death certificate? And lastly, is Find My iPhone ever wrong? Can FBI find deleted messages? If there are no concerning messages and you're not hiding anything, then there should be no concern if they pull up deleted text messages. At least I would think. The expert also showed the physical location data from Carmen, who is the housekeeper who allegedly went to pick up the substances for Corey, from Robbie. Robbie is the dealer, and the location data shows every single time that Carmen and Robbie met up together. It shows when Carmen took the stuff to Corey. And unfortunately, while I feel it's very much been proven that Corey was buying stuff through Carmen and Robbie, it does not prove that Corey secretly gave it to Eric. So much of the evidence in this case is circumstantial, and the hard evidence that we have does not mean that Corey did it. We just have to hope that the evidence continues to get better and better, and that whatever the truth is comes out. I will go over the location stuff in another video.
Prosecutors are saying they have 40 terabytes of evidence against David. 40 terabytes is equivalent to 40,000 gigabytes. How many gigs does your iPhone have? Yesterday, David pleaded not guilty. The charges revealed key details that were among the first concrete public moves made in a grisly and horrific case that had been under a largely secret investigation in the 7 months that Celeste Rivas was found dead. 21-year-old David Burke was charged with first-degree murder, lewd and lascivious acts with a person under 14, and mutilating a body. The defense lawyer entered a not guilty plea to all counts behalf of Burke, who made his first court appearance yesterday, April 20th, 2026. Celeste's parents were at the hearing, and they did not speak. The judge is also holding David without bail. Authorities allege David killed Celeste to protect his career on the rise after she threatened to report their sexual relationship. His debut album, Withered, was released just 2 days after authorities said she was last known to be alive. She was reported missing by her family in 2024 when she was 13. That was her age when, according to the allegations in the criminal complaint, the singer engaged in continuous sexual abuse of her for at least a year from September of 2023 to September of 2024. California law penalizes abuse of a child under 14 especially harshly. Authorities, who described her Monday as a runaway, said Rivas was 14 when she was killed with a sharp object on or around April 23, 2025, the day she was at Burke's house in the Hollywood Hills. Prosecutors allege Burke mutilated her body about 2 weeks later. What the fuck did he do in those other 2 weeks? What the fuck is he doing? The murder charges include special circumstances, lying in wait, committing crime for financial gain, and murdering the witness in an investigation that could carry the death penalty. Prosecutors haven't announced when they will seek it. The witness that David is alleged to have killed is Celeste herself, who could have given testimony about the sex crime allegations. David's defense says, "We believe the actual evidence will show David did not murder Celeste. We would like to have the evidence come into the light of day." David's defense attorney says that she would like a public preliminary hearing to take place as soon as possible so a judge can decide whether there is enough evidence for trial. The lead prosecutor said, "We'll be very happy to put on the evidence that we've collected." Celeste was found inside a Tesla that was towed from the Hollywood Hills on September 8th when Burke was on tour in support of his album. She was found a day after she would have turned 15. Her family had reported her missing from her hometown about 70 miles southeast of Los Angeles. The singer had been under investigation by an LA County grand jury looking into the death. The probe was officially secret, but its existence and Burke's designation as its target was revealed in February when his father, objected in a Texas court to subpoenas demanding they testify. The 2023 Tesla Model Y was registered in the singer's name at their address, according to court filings. Authorities did not publicly acknowledge him as the suspect until his arrest Thursday. Police investigators searching the Tesla in the tow yard found a cadaver bag covered with insects and a strong odor of decay. Detectives partially unzipped the bag and found a head and torso. Investigators from the Los Angeles County Medical Examiner's Office removed the bag and discovered arms and legs had been severed from the body, according to court documents. A second black bag was found under the first. The dismembered body parts were inside of it. No cause of death has been publicly revealed. The police got a judge to block the release details of the autopsy.
This is how Celeste looked when David first met her. She was just 11 years old. I mean, I don't know how anyone could look at this face and not see a literal child, a baby. And despite this, David allegedly continued to essay her for years before taking her life. And Celeste had multiple cries for help. I mean, just listen to what she said on one of David's screams while he has her with a hoodie on, covered up as usual.
That's controversial.
It's controversial of kids.
And it's getting to the point where David's own family is no longer supporting him. David's brother Caleb posted this on Instagram moments ago, saying all P's and R's should, period. Celeste was not a woman who was in a relationship. She was a child who was a victim. And what David did to her from beginning to end was pure evil. Preliminary hearing is scheduled for May 1st, and a trial will likely happen soon after, so as any new details come out, I'll keep you guys updated. But rest in peace to Celeste, and let me know what you guys think about all of this.
Celeste was a 7th grader last time she was reported missing. Then she was found dismembered in David's Tesla. Here's a timeline I've put together. In February of 2024, Celeste was reported missing. March 19th, 2024, Celeste was reported missing. April 5th, 2024, Celeste was reported missing. Contact she had with her family was in May of 2025. A little over a year after being reported missing for the last time. August 27th, 2025, LA parking officials first ticketed the Tesla. On September 8th, a girl's decomposed body was found in the Tesla. It was a decomposed head and torso. Her body was found a day after she would have turned 15. September 18th, 2025, detectives served a search warrant at David's home and they took various items, including electronics and computers. On September 25th, 2025, a memorial was held for Celeste. In mid-November, the Los Angeles District Attorney's Office convened a secret investigative grand jury to hear evidence, including testimony from the witnesses. November 21st, 2025, Los Angeles County Department of Medical Examiner received a court order to seal autopsy results and any documentation in Celeste's death at the request of the Los Angeles Police Department. February 12th, 2026, a key grand jury witness was brought back to LA from Montana to testify. February 23rd, 2025, documents show David is the target of the Los Angeles County criminal jury investigation into Celeste's death. The record also revealed that her arms and legs have been severed from the body. April 16th, 2026, David was arrested on suspicion of murder in connection with Celeste's death.
If they were in a romantic relationship, allegedly, she was waiting until she turned 18 years old to make it public. And in another one of David's songs called Decide, the lyrics read, "I know what the problem is, save your tears, 7 years." That was released in 2022 when Celeste would have been 11 years old. 11 plus 7 equals 18. In the music video for his song One More Dance, released in February of 2025, David appears blindfolded, wearing a red-stained shirt, dragging what seems to be a deceased body across the ground, and then the body is stuffed into the trunk of a car. In the end of that video, they are digging a hole and disposing of the body. Furthermore, it is believed that when Celeste was missing, she was last seen wearing Hello Kitty slippers. David, all of a sudden, has this obsession with Hello Kitty, and allegedly in one video, he talks about a Hello Kitty girl that he met in 2021. As far as her family, I'm not 100% sure how true this is, but apparently her brother told NBC LA that her family was aware that she was dating David, and that he had seen him pick up Celeste in that same black Tesla, and that when she went missing, she was on her way to hang out with him, but she never returned. Another source I'm sure you've seen that has spoken out is a former teacher at Lakeland Village Middle School who says that he was Celeste's teacher when she disappeared. He said that she ran away once, actually 2 times before. He said that she ran away twice to go to Hollywood to meet up with a guy that she met on social media who was a rapper in LA. He says that she ran away from home. She was gone for like a month. Authorities found her in Hollywood, brought her back home, and then she ran away again. Also, you may have seen people on social media talking about 2 different Celeste. Celeste Rivas Hernandez, the confirmed victim, and a different Celeste, Celeste Herrera. Celeste Herrera is older. She's 23 years old, and her name has been brought up because she has interacted on social media allegedly with David before, and people think that both of the Celestes look alike. However, there's no question of who the victim is. The victim has been confirmed, but something to keep in mind, I guess. Last week, a search warrant was executed to search through the house that David had been renting and living in less than 2 blocks away from where the Tesla was initially found. They were looking for evidence in connection to this case. They were specifically looking for blood evidence. They were even searching drains, looking for any trace of evidence. And what they found has not yet been released. As of now, David has not been charged with any crime. He has canceled his US and European tour dates and is reportedly cooperating with law enforcement authorities. Both Crocs and Hollister have removed promotional content featuring David from their campaigns, and Interscope Records, his record label, has also suspended all promotional activities, including the release of his new album, Withered. Celeste's cause of death and manner of death have been listed as deferred. It has been said that she is believed to have been deceased for, quote, an extended period of time, but there is no official ruling, meaning that it has not yet been determined, as they are probably likely still waiting on additional test results to make that decision. It sounds like the LAPD is also waiting on those test results to release any suspect information. However, it is clear that this is being investigated as a homicide and it is an ongoing investigation. I think we can all agree that this was no accident and someone did that to that poor girl on purpose. I'm sure you guys have seen there are a lot of rumors going around online, but I think the most important thing here is to wait for verified updates from law enforcement instead of assuming every single thing that we see on the internet, because that doesn't help anyone. For example, the idea that Celeste was pregnant. At this time, the LAPD has not commented at all on the pregnancy speculation or the alleged infant remains. We also don't know where she was for the 17 months that she was missing. I also have questions about the exact date that she was last seen, because most reports have the date listed as April 5th of 2024, but there are a few that have it listed as May 5th of 2024. With that being said, though, I did read one source that said that she did go missing in April of 2024, but that in May, her family got a call from someone telling them to stop looking from Celeste, but that still remains unclear. I also personally am wondering why, if neighbors reported smelling that foul odor coming from the Tesla when it was still parked in the neighborhood, how and why was the body not discovered until 2 days after arriving at the tow company parking lot? Another question I have, sorry, now I'm just kind of thinking out loud, is in regards to the body. It was reported as a head and a torso. However, when describing it, it was also reported that she was wearing a tube top and size small leggings. But where were the leggings if her legs were not found? I'm not sure. So there's a lot that we don't know. And like I said, it feels like new information is coming out every 5 minutes. But what we do know is that a teenager was taken from this world in a horrible way far too soon. And I really, really hope that however this ends and how it progresses, I hope that her family and her loved ones get the justice that they deserve. A memorial service has been planned for Celeste. That is next month. And also a GoFundMe has been started for her, shared on behalf of the family. And they wrote, as many of you know, Celeste Rivas Hernandez has been identified as the body found last week. She was a beloved daughter, sister, cousin, and friend. Her family is heartbroken and devastated by this tragic loss. They are seeking help to lay her body to rest. Any funds you can donate are greatly appreciated.
The Coachella Airbnb situation is literally insane, because how is it $68,000 the weekend of Coachella and then only $2,400 right after? Oh, but it gets worse than just price gouging, because I have seen numerous people claim that their hosts cancel on them last minute right before Coachella, even though some of them booked a month to a year in advance, just for them to go back on Airbnb's website and see that it was relisted for a higher price. Someone said she should file a complaint. She said, I did, because we see that she relisted for a higher price. I am so upset. There seems to be two really popular excuses these hosts are using, and some of them may not be excuses. Some of it might be legit. But for it to happen to so many people is just very interesting to me. So this is Airbnb support reaching out to her, basically saying that someone else had canceled those dates and she was able to book them before the host could raise the prices. And that instead of paying the $500 that you were going to pay because you've already booked this stay, it's going to be $1,600 instead per night. So either you can pay the price difference or you can cancel, because if you cancel, then they can just go right back and relist it. So remember that. Never cancel it yourself if a host is asking you to, ever. And I understand this price change may not be within your budget. You don't know my budget. It's not, but you don't know that. And here's the other top excuse. Sincerest apologies. This property is being sold and the new buyers do not have a permit from the city to rent the unit. So my basic understanding about this, and someone may be able to explain it better, some of these locations have to have permits to rent it out. So if someone actually did sell their house and didn't have a permit, then yeah, but you randomly close right now, right before Coachella. Not just you, but there's at least 20 other people who have said the exact same thing, that they sold their house. I don't know. Maybe everyone is just selling right now. The price differences are just insane. So $12,000 if you want to stay for Coachella. Exact same rental, $1,000 just right after. $21,000 for Coachella, $715 right after, $11,000 and $998 right after. 21,000, 6,000 for most of the rest of the year. So at least they're a little bit closer. And here's another girl who posted about hers getting canceled. And again, the owner sold the property. I could literally go on for hours on all the different stories that are happening right now, just right before Coachella this year. It just seems super slimy and shady to me that maybe not all of them, but at least some of them are canceling these people intentionally to make more money. Like, just wait to list it or something. You know when Coachella is. It's not like it's some surprise and they announce the dates weeks before. You know it's coming. You know that you're going to make a lot of money that weekend. Wait. Because there are people like this girl who's wanted to go to Coachella for 10 years. She realizes she has free will. She buys the tickets. Then she gets canceled on and she has no other option. Now she just can't go. And yes, there's absolutely more important things to worry about. But if doing something brings someone joy, we need joy in this world. If going to Coachella is going to make you happy and give you a break from your regular life working and paying bills, you should be able to do that. And some Airbnb host shouldn't be able to rip that away from you. Clearly, there needs to be a policy change because I'm telling you, this has been happening for years. But I honestly feel like this is one of the worst, or it's the year that the most people are speaking out about it. Oh, and that's the last thing I'll say. There are so many videos about this, but this is happening to so many people who don't film content or didn't post about it. So if there's 100 people who are making videos, then there are so many more that this is affected, just so people can make a little bit of extra cash. Get your money, but do it ethically. Don't screw people over.